رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا أبي القاسم مصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيت الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين وأصحابه الغر الميامين. الحمد لله الذي جعلنا من المتمسكين بولاية أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. أما بعد، يقول الله في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أذن للذين يقاتلون بأنهم ظلموا وإن الله على نصرهم لقدير. Salawat. The concept of jihad is perhaps one of the most controversial topics in the world today. Jihad is a topic and a term that is very famous not only in Islam but also Western society as well. And like I said, it's very controversial because the denomination or the connotation that jihad has in the world today, unfortunately, is quite negative. We understand as normal human beings, and I don't say this as a Muslim but as a human being, that terrorism is automatically bad. Nobody condones terrorism. Everybody, when they look at terrorism, they will say this is evil, this is bad. But unfortunately, media has done such a thing where now automatically every time you see the word terrorist, you will either see a Muslim label or what we call a jihadi. If you look at the articles posted by BBC or CNN, these famous news broadcasting companies, they will use the term jihadi or, for example, Muslims. If you look at 9/11, it was perhaps one of the turning points behind this word. Prior to 9/11, September 2011, this word was not as famous within the Western world. But after 9/11, it changed the whole way the Muslims are seen throughout the world, especially in Western countries. Now, the media has indoctrinated people so much where now automatically if you think Muslim, people who don't know anything about Islam, they're like, okay, terrorist. I'm sure you faced it at school where you're like, you know what? You would have either faced it or you would have seen something where a person who is non-Muslim sees Islam and they're like, this is not what I want to get into. Sometimes at work, you might not be given opportunities because of your identity as a Muslim. Sometimes you may have been a victim of bullying, what we call Islamophobia, because of your identity as a Muslim. And a lot of it is linked back to what we call this jihad. As in when Charlie Hebdo, the famous magazine that depicted the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, and his family, in a way that was satirical, yes, it was satire, it caused a lot of riots in Europe. Charlie Hebdo posted, or let's say broadcasted, a picture they drew of the Holy Prophet in a very demeaning manner. Muslims took a shock to this and they protested. A lot of riots came out in Europe because of the so-called jihadis. There were certain bans in Europe about hijab. Right now in France, there's a ban on hijab. Women cannot wear hijab in France right now. Because of what? Islamophobia, lack of understanding of Islam, lack of understanding of jihad. So that's why tonight's topic, jihad, is very, very important. Because we need to address this misconception between ourselves. A, we live in a Western country. B, we're going to be mingling with Western society. Therefore, you might have a friend whose name is Harry, who's not Muslim. Or, for example, you have a non-Muslim friend who could be called whatever his name is. The point is, you mix with Western society, and it's best to be able to show your ideas and your beliefs as to what you believe in. If I say I'm a Muslim, but I can't tell my non-Muslim friend what jihad is, automatically what that person is going to think is, look, I've got a terrorist sitting right next to me, and he can't prove to me that it's otherwise. So inshallah, with the limited time that we have tonight, we'll briefly delve into this topic. We have two sides to this topic. One side, like I said, we have the Islamophobes. Yeah, those people who have a phobia. Phobia means to fear of Islam. There are certain people, if you wear a hijab in a bus, they won't sit near you because they're like, this guy or this girl, I should say, seems a bit shady. Or if I have a long beard and I sit on the bus or I'm waiting for something on the train, let's say in Melbourne, then automatically you have some eyes looking at you. Why is this guy's beard so long? If I wear Arabic clothing, let's say a kafiyah or a thobe, and I go out in the public, automatically you get eyes who look at you as in, who is this guy? Why is it coming out like this? You've seen the memes and you've seen the pranks that people do online, where unfortunately it's probably not the best idea. Yes, I get it, people do it for fun. They throw a bag into a barber shop and they run with thobes. Yes, people do it for fun, but this is not something that should necessarily be joked about. Anyway, one article from The Guardian in 2008, an Australian article, showed us that, listen, these people who are terrorists, they provided their testimonies, they provided their confessions. The article said that, listen, these people who have done terrorist crimes, most of them have a lack of literacy or religious literacy. They don't know much about their literature. These terrorists, they don't know much about their actual book that they're preaching. Because naturally, as a Muslim, when I sit here tonight, naturally, I can't think to myself how my religion, my prophet would condone terrorism. I was told from when I was young that Muhammad Rasulullah was a man of mercy. But now I see so much violence in the world where I begin to think to myself, what is going on? What I'm taught in a mosque like this and what my friend tells me outside is completely different. Because there are claims from the Western perspective is that Muhammad was a warmonger. He was a man of violence. He spread the religion by the sword. So how do we address these questions? It is crucial to know your religion to be able to understand and perhaps address these misconceptions with your friend. If you look at where, of course, this one's a bit controversial, so I won't go too deeply into it, but if you look at where ISIS was created and who funded ISIS, you can Google it. And you'll see where they were created, who funded weaponry to ISIS, who established Al-Qaeda, who established Boko Haram, these terrorist organizations, then you'll see that it wasn't necessarily Muslims, it was a different organization. But that for another night, inshallah. In Islam, there are three types of jihad. So listen carefully because this is your main lesson, okay? First type of jihad, first, let's go to the root word of jihad. Jihad means to strive. In the Arabic language, we call it jahada. Yes, jahada refers to a strive, a struggle. When we think about jihad, automatically we think about fights, bombs, guns. No, this is not the case. Jihad in the Arabic language means to strive, to struggle. Yes? So, jahada means to strive. Mostly for the sake of God. The first type of jihad is the greatest type of jihad, which is what we call Jihadul Akbar, which means the greatest jihad. And what's the greatest jihad? It is Jihadun Nafs. The struggle with yourself, the struggle with your soul. When I pray my 5 prayers on time, that's Jihadun Nafs. When I'm good with my parents, that's Jihadun Nafs. When I stop myself from doing that which is haram, that's jihadun nafs. This is the greatest form of jihad. How do we know this? Shaykh al-Suduq in his book Amali, he gives the context. He says, listen, when the Prophet was coming back with his companions from the Battle of Badr, he said, listen, you guys have won a great victory at the Battle of Badr. Yes, the first war in the religion. But he said, listen, the real challenge starts now. He said, the greatest jihad actually starts now. The companions asked him, Ya Rasulullah, what's the greatest jihad? He said, the jihad of nafs, yourself, your soul. How to better yourself, that's jihad al-nafs. That's the greatest one. Then you have the second type of jihad, which we call the great jihad. Not the greatest, but the great jihad. This one is called al-jihadul kabir. That one is jihadul akbar. This one is jihadul kabir. This is what we call educational jihad. In other words, it's an educational campaign. When a person seeks to learn knowledge for the sake of God, this is what we call jihadul kabir. You are striving, remember I said jihad is to strive, to struggle. You are striving and struggling in your life to learn about the religion of God for the sake of God. That's why when you have scholars, they are known as mujtahid or mujahid. Yes? They are mujahid because they strive in the way of God for the sake of God. That's what the second type of jihad is. The Quran actually says it, فَلَا تُطِعِ الْكَافِرِينَ وَجَاهِدْهُمْ بِهِ جَهَادًا كَبِيرًا. So do not yield to the disbelievers, but strive diligently against them with this Quran. In other words, discuss with them with this Quran that we have revealed with you. Use your knowledge to be able to strive for the truth and so on and so forth. This is the second type of jihad. The topic we want to talk about tonight is the last jihad, which we call the lesser jihad. Yes? The lesser jihad is what we call this war that you're talking about. When you type jihad on Google, all you get is guns, bombs, terrorism. This is not true. So tonight, inshallah, we'll look at this. The lesser jihad. I like to call it the holy defense, not necessarily the holy war. Why? Because war has a negative connotation to it. Automatically, when you think about war, you're thinking something negative. You're thinking something dangerous. You're thinking something bad. But when I tell you it's a holy defense, then it completely changes the story. Yes? What is the purpose of jihad? The purpose of jihad is to establish justice and remove injustice through the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Pay attention to this definition because I'll be using it later on. Establishing justice, removing injustice with the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? In other words, when I live in my territory and somebody comes and tries to occupy my house, I'm not just going to stand there and watch him do it. Yes? If somebody slaps me on my right cheek, am I going to turn the left one and say, here, slap this one as well? No, I'm not. Naturally, I will fight back because it's mine. It's my wealth. It's my house. For example, if it's my belief, then I need to defend my belief as well. Jihad is not someone trying to force someone to convert to the religion. Many people think that the jihadis are people who try to convert the religion or people to the religion. But the Quran makes it clear, لا إكراه في الدين قد تبين الرشد من الغي. Yes, there is no compulsion in religion because truth truly stands out from falsehood. I don't need to force you to convert. You come to the religion of Islam through your own initiative, through your own intellect, through your own study. So in other words, the meaning of jihad, this last one, is a reaction to an offense. In other words, someone has done something offensive to you, you are reacting to it to defend yourself. And one ayah, I'll give you a couple of examples, but one ayah that I can give to perhaps give more understanding on this is the one I cited at the very beginning, where it says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, أُذِنَ لِلَّذِينَ يُقَاتِلُونَ بِأَنَّهُمْ ظُلِمُوا وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ عَلَى نَصْرِهِمْ لَقَدِيرٌ. Which means what? It means that the people at that time have been given permission to fight back. أُذِنَ لِلَّذِينَ يُقَاتِلُونَ. And it makes it quite clear. بِأَنَّهُمْ ظُلِمُوا. Those who have been oppressed. In other words, the people who have been oppressed, they have been given the right to fight back. Now this changes the whole complete meaning of jihad. Because now, all you're doing is you're defending yourself. Why? Because you've been oppressed. The companions of Rasulullah, they were oppressed 13 years in Mecca. Rasulullah, I mentioned, 13 years in Mecca, he had to go through a lot. And Allah did not give him permission at that time to fight back. He said, Muhammad, remain patient, have sabr, and inshallah, there will be a time where you'll be victorious. Did that happen? Yes, of course it happened. Because naturally, when I'm being oppressed, I defend myself. If you look at the human body, when you have a bacteria that enters your body, what does your immune system do? Fights back, doesn't it? Exactly, right. So when I'm sick, or, a'udhu billah, let's say you've got a cancerous cell inside you, your red and white blood cells fight back. They don't just say, welcome Mr. Bacteria, come over and take over my body. Doesn't say that, yes? Even from a biological perspective, your body doesn't just stay, it tries its best to fight back. Same thing as when we're looking at defending yourself. So naturally, when I have something who attacks me or somebody who attacks me and there is oppression going on, I fight back. And this is exactly what Abu Abdullah did. Is لا ينهاكم الله عن الذين لم يقتلوكم في الدين ولم يخرجكم من دياركم أن تبرؤهم وتقسطوا إليهم إن الله يحب المقسطين. In other words, Allah does not prevent you from dealing kindly with those people who have not wronged you. If a person who is nice to you, you don't fight him. This is the context of jihad, because people, when they think about jihad, it's like, you know what? Jihad means all out war, go kill everyone. No, 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 no. Those who have not fight you, you don't fight back. Those who have oppressed you, you have the right to defend yourself from the oppressor. Yes? The people who have not been unfair to you, you have no right to fight them back. I want you to search every war that Ahlul Bayt participated in and see whether it was them who initiated or they were just defending themselves. Read it. If you read the lives of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, you'll see. Imam Ali alayhi salam in the battle of Jamal, before going to war, he sent several letters to the wife of the Holy Prophet saying, listen, we should not go to war. This is not the right thing. He sent many letters. He tried his best not to go to war. Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam on the 10th of Muharram, he comes out and he tries his best not to fight. You know what he does? First he tells the army early morning, because we have a misconception where Abu Abdullah came 10th of Muharram, took the sword out, said let's go, hayhat min nazillah, everybody bring it on. No, this is not the case. Imam Hussein got up 10th of Muharram, early morning, goes, gives a sermon to the army of Yazid. He says, oh people of Sham and Kufa and so on, do you not know who I am? He tells them to reflect, because Imam Hussein thinks or believes that hopefully this sermon of mine will bring people to an understanding of what they're actually doing. He says, oh people, do you not know who I am? Am I not the son of the daughter of your prophet? He says, look, you know, there are certain companions which were alive at that time. He says, if you don't believe me, go and ask the companions of the prophet who I am and what my relation is to the prophet. So why do you want to kill me? Have I wronged you in a way? Have I stolen something from you? Abu Abdullah is trying to make them understand, look, we don't want to go to war. Ahlul Bayt are not those who are war thirsty. Then even if that doesn't work, Abu Abdullah takes the next step. He says, listen, if you don't like me, be a free human being. Go back home. Don't fight me. Don't fight me. Be free. Go back to your homes. Go back to your families. Leave me alone. On the 10th of Muharram, until early morning, Imam al-Hussein did not want to fight. He said, look, let me go back home. If Yazid doesn't want me to do such and such, then I will go and do my own thing. Let me go home. Until they say that, listen, you got to either bow down to the ruler and give your hand, be a good boy, that kind of thing. This is where you get the famous lines, hayhat min nazillah. You don't see a person like Hussein bowing down to oppression and tyranny. Imam Hussein tried his very best to say no to war. But the moment they thought they could bully him, he said, no chance. You're not going to bully Hussein bin Ali. Yes? You're not going to bully him. So this is what we call jihad. Jihad, because to Abu Abdullah, it was a defense. He was just defending himself. And even on the day, Umar bin Sa'ad said, I want everybody to know that I, Umar bin Sa'ad, have shot the first arrow and began this war. So it wasn't Imam al-Hussein who began the war. And because there are ethics of jihad. Yes? For example, you fight only in the way of God, not for your own ego. The moment you start hurting people because of your own ego, that's not jihad. That's number one. Number two, you don't fight those who don't fight you. Yes? Further than that, Imam Ali alayhi salam, one of his advices in Nahj al-Balagha, he says to his soldiers, oh my soldiers, fight in the way of Allah, but do not be a person who finishes the person who's wounded. So if you see a wounded soldier in front of you, don't finish him off. If you see that he doesn't want to fight anymore, let him go. The captives, let's say, for example, the children, the women, do not cause them any harm. Don't cut water to your enemies, because water is the necessity of every human being. Don't cut trees. These are the ethics of jihad. Not what you see at media today about those who like to represent Islam. Because Ahlul Bayt is what we call ar-rahmah to the alam. The Quran says, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةٌ لِلْعَالَمِينَ. The Prophet was not sent except of a mercy to mankind. Yes? The Prophet, in the early conquests of Mecca, he could have easily killed everyone at Mecca because they oppressed him for 13 years. Abu Sufyan, Wahshi, Hinda, all of these people. Wahshi was the one who killed his uncle, Hamza. He killed him and he ripped open his chest, and obviously you have the famous story where Hinda tries to eat the liver. But Rasulullah, on the day of the opening of Mecca, Wahshi comes to him. He says, "You're forgiven." Rasulullah, you're so powerful, you can finish him up. No, the greatest power, Rasulullah says, is when you have it but you don't exercise it. Wahshi, you're free to go. Abu Sufyan, you're forgiven, free to go. Hinda, forgiven, free to go. That's why the biggest victory of Rasulullah was through a peace treaty. Inna fatahna laka fathan mubina, the treaty of Hudaybiyah. Muhammad's biggest victory was not a war, it was a peace treaty. So that later on nobody can say that Muhammad was a warmonger and he spread the religion by the sword. Rather, he was a person who acted with mercy. Then there are verses where it specifically mentions about the war, where it says, okay, what about the verses where you fight the disbelievers where you find them? Or you kill the disbelievers where you find them? I'm sure many of you have come across this verse. These are specific verses which are in the context of military, in the battlefield. So for example, if we were to look one, it says, وَقَاتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ الَّذِينَ يَقْتُلُونَكُمْ وَلَا تَعْتَدُوا إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ الْمُعْتَدِينَ. Fight in the way of Allah only against those who wage war against you. But do not transgress, because Allah does not like transgressors. You know what I find interesting? As every time somebody who is a non-Muslim who quotes that ayah, they only quote that ayah. They don't quote the ayah before or after it. Because the ayah after it will exactly give you the answer you're looking for. What does the next ayah says? وَقَاتَلُوهُمْ حَيْثُ ثَقِفْتُمُوهُمْ وَأَخْرَجُوهُمْ مِنْ حَيْثٍ أَخْرَجَكُمْ وَالْفِتْنَةُ أَشَدُّ مِنَ الْقَتْلِ. Kill them wherever you come upon them and drive them out of the places which they drive you out. In other words, what belongs to you, you defend yourself. You don't go and transgress and think that, you take the things into your own hands and you take it the next step. Because if and I'm speaking to a non-Muslim, if a non-Muslim is trying to take these verses out of contexts, then you have the same right to say there are certain verses in other books of literature that say this. Because some people say, listen, the Quran is the one with the violent verses. The Bible is what preaches peace. Yes? They say Muhammad came with the sword and Jesus came with love. Okay, let's have a look. In the Old Testament, we have Deuteronomy chapter 20, verses 16 to 17. Because I can open up this can of worms and see which religion truly has peace or not. Yes? Old Testament, the Torah. In the book of Deuteronomy, it says, however, in the cities of the nations of the Lord, your God has given you an inheritance. Do not leave anything alive that breathes. Anything that breathes, don't let it live. Or for example, Deuteronomy 25:19, where it says, you shall blot out the memory of the Amalek. The Amaleks are this one enemy of Jews. And I'll get back to this later. Because it says, do not let the enemy or the memory of the Amalekites be remembered. In other words, wipe out the memory of the Amaleks. Where is peace in that? Where a book is telling me that you completely get rid of the whole memory of a specific tribe, I don't see where the peace is. Further than that, somebody might say, look, say that was the Old Testament. Jesus brought the New Testament, yes? He abolished the laws and he brought the New Testament. Okay, let's have a look at the New Testament in the Bible. In the Bible, the book of Matthew, chapter 10, verse 34. In the book of Matthew, Jesus supposedly says, do not suppose that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I have not come to bring peace, but rather with the sword. But I thought the Bible was a book of peace. But then I understand that, listen, you can't take it out of context. When a non-Muslim says to me that, listen, you're taking it out of context, that's not what Jesus meant. Okay. So when you see these verses in the Quran, what makes you think you are taking it or not taking it out of context? All I'm saying is that there has to be a consistency in our criteria when we look at these verses. The same way you say, look, you're taking that verse out of context. The same way you can't take the verses of jihad out of context in the Quran. They say, look, but what about these terrorists? Every time they bomb or they do this, they quote verses of your book. I could say it's the same thing for any person who quotes the Bible. And let me give you an example. For example, Eric Robert Rudolph, 1996, bombs the US. Yes? He was a person who was affiliated with anti-abortion. And he bombed Olympic Park in 1996. And he quoted the book of Psalm. So just because someone quotes a book that is religious, does that make the whole religion a terrorist religion? No, not at all. Or for example, the Ku Klux Klan. Most of you are aware of the KKK. The crimes that the KKK did against the African Americans, you can't say that it was Christianity that did, but rather it was a radical point or a sect or a group of people who claim to represent Christianity. So why can't we do the same about Islam? Where these people who come and commit these war and nonsense crimes, who said they represent the religion? Right now, till this day, the regime of Israel, sometimes, they refer to Hamas as the Amalekites. Remember what they said? We shall get rid of the memory of the Amaleks or the Amalekites. So sometimes, not every Jew, but some Jew, when they look at this, they look at Hamas as the Amalekites. And they want to get rid of that. Sometimes, these are the type of things. And to conclude, when you, as a US citizen or an Australian citizen, you want to pledge your citizenship, you want to get your citizenship as a citizen of the country, there's a specific oath that you read. You read a specific oath where you say, I pledge my allegiance to the country and I dissociate from certain political ideology or religious ideology. And I'll read bits of it from you from the US citizenship oath. It says, I hereby declare an oath that I absolutely, entirely renounce allegiance to fidelity or any prince or sovereignty or kingship or any religion. And until in the end it says, I will bear arms on the behalf of United States and I will perform that which is required by the state and participate in armed forces for this country until it says a specific bit at the end. It says, I will help the government, defend the constitution, combat service, so help me God. They brought God into it. So in other words, the citizenship of a country, when you pay your allegiance to the country, you're saying, God is with me. Why can't I do the same with my religion? When I say I am faithful to my religion and I pledge allegiance to my religion, therefore I have to do what my religion commands me to do. So when I do jihad, like I said, 3 types of jihad. Even if I do jihad, it's because I'm loyal to my religion. Inshallah, this provides just an understanding of what jihad is so that later on when your friend asks you, listen, what's jihad? You say, first of all, jihad is jihadul akbar, is your very own self-discipline. Because nobody ever, from a non-Muslim perspective, will ever think that jihad is about bettering your person, yourself as a person. Being good to my neighbor is jihad al-nafs. Being good to my parents is jihad al-nafs. Yes? But nobody will get that. So you, as a Muslim, it's your responsibility to tell your friends that, listen, Habibi, what you see on the media is not jihad. Let me tell you what jihad is. So when I do jihad to protect my faith, my belief, my house, this is because I pay allegiance to my religion. And it's to establish justice and remove injustice. So inshallah, to conclude, inshallah, this gives a understanding of what jihad, and hopefully we can use this to perhaps explain to our friends if you come with the situation.